The morning sun had barely risen over Los Angeles when Rachel pulled into the studio parking lot. At 7 months pregnant, getting out of the car had become an adventure all by itself. She gripped the doorframe, pushed herself up, and felt that familiar ache in her lower back that had become her constant companion these days. Rachel worked as a set coordinator for one of the biggest film productions of the year. It was the kind of job she'd dreamed about since film school, the kind that could open doors she'd been knocking on for years. But timing, as they say, had its own plans. Just 3 months into the production, she'd found out she was expecting. She could still remember the panic that had gripped her heart that day. Tell them now and risk losing the opportunity? Wait and hope they'd understand later? In the end, she'd chosen honesty, and to her relief, they'd let her stay on. But relief came with its own weight. Now she felt she had something to prove, that she needed to work twice as hard to show them they'd made the right choice. The parking lot was nearly empty at this hour. Rachel liked it that way. It gave her time to settle in, to organize her thoughts and her ever-growing to-do list before the chaos began. She grabbed her bag from the back seat, heavier than it probably should be, and started the long walk to the production office. Every step reminded her of how much her body had changed. Her feet, which used to carry her effortlessly through 16-hour days, now protested after just a few hours. Her back ached in ways she'd never experienced before. And the baby had discovered her ribs were apparently the perfect place for gymnastics practice. But Rachel pushed through. She always did. Inside the production office, she began her routine. Checking emails, reviewing the day's schedule, making sure every prop was accounted for, every scene change mapped out to the minute. Film sets ran on precision, and any mistake on her part could cost thousands of dollars and precious shooting time. Her phone buzzed with a text from David, her husband. "Please tell me you're not overdoing it today." She smiled and typed back, "I'm fine." Stop worrying, but David had reason to worry. Last week she'd nearly fainted during a particularly hot outdoor shoot. The week before, she'd worked until midnight organizing props for the next day's scenes. He'd found her asleep at the kitchen table at 2 a.m, her laptop still open, her swollen feet propped up on a chair. "This isn't sustainable," he'd told her more than once. "The baby needs you healthy. I need you healthy." Rachel knew he was right, somewhere deep down, beneath the ambition and the drive she knew, but knowing something and acting on it were two different things entirely. By 8 a.m, the set had come alive. Crew members rushed in every direction, carrying equipment, adjusting lights, moving set pieces. Rachel was in the middle of it all, her clipboard in hand, directing traffic like a conductor leading an orchestra. "We need the Victorian chairs moved to stage 3, she called out to 2 grips who hurried past. "The prop master is looking for you," someone else shouted over the noise. "Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes, Rachel responded, already moving toward the next crisis that needed solving. She didn't notice Keanu Reeves watching her from across the set. The film's lead actor had arrived early, as he usually did, and had been observing the organized chaos that happened before cameras started rolling. He'd noticed Rachel before, of course. It was hard not to notice someone who seemed to be everywhere at once, solving problems before most people even realized they existed. But today, he noticed something else. The way she pressed her hand against her lower back when she thought no one was looking. The slight grimace that crossed her face when she bent down to check something on a lower shelf. The way she paused just for a moment, to catch her breath before launching into her next task. 5 minutes to first positions, the assistant director's voice boomed across the set. Rachel checked her list one more time. Everything was in place. Every prop exactly where it needed to be. Every piece of furniture positioned according to the director's specifications. She allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction before the self-doubt crept back in. Was it good enough? Had she missed anything? The morning shoot went smoothly. Rachel coordinated 3 scene changes without a hitch, anticipating needs before anyone had to ask. During a break, she finally sat down for the first time in 4 hours. Her feet throbbed and she could feel her ankles swelling inside her shoes. "You okay?" asked Jenny, one of the production assistants who'd become something of a friend over the past months. "Just tired," Rachel said, which was true but far from the whole truth. "You know, nobody would think less of you if you took it a bit easier," Jenny said gently. "You're growing a whole human being in there." "That's kind of a big deal." Rachel forced a smile. I'm fine, really. Just 7 more weeks and then I'll have plenty of time to rest. 7 more weeks. Sometimes it felt like an eternity. And sometimes, especially on her hardest days, it felt like not nearly enough time to prove herself worthy of coming back after the baby arrived. Lunch break came and went. Rachel ate a sandwich at her desk while reviewing the afternoon schedule. Around her, others laughed and relaxed, but she couldn't afford to. Every moment counted. Every task completed was another brick in the foundation of her reputation. The afternoon brought new challenges. A prop went missing and Rachel spent an hour tracking it down. The director decided to add an unscheduled scene, which meant rearranging everything she'd so carefully organized. Through it all, she smiled, she problem-solved, she made it happen. But her body was sending increasingly urgent signals that something had to give. By 4 in the afternoon, the cramping started. Not the gentle movement of the baby she'd grown accustomed to, but something sharper, more insistent. Rachel told herself it was nothing, just normal pregnancy discomfort. She'd read all the books, attended all the classes. This was probably just Braxton Hicks contractions, her body's way of practicing for the real thing. She could push through. She always did. "Rachel, we need you in wardrobe," someone called out. "There's an issue with the costume change timing." She stood up and for just a moment the world tilted. She gripped the edge of her desk, steadied herself and took a breath. Then another. The cramping intensified, but she pushed it down, locked it away in that place where she kept all the doubts and fears and physical complaints that threatened to slow her down. "On my way," she called back, her voice steady even as her hands trembled slightly. As she walked across the set, Keanu watched her again. This time concern creased his features. He'd seen that walk before, that determination to keep going despite obvious pain. He'd seen it in stunt performers who'd pushed too hard, in crew members who'd worked themselves to exhaustion, in himself during darker times when work was the only thing that kept grief at bay. He made a mental note to speak with the assistant director, but something told him that conversation might need to happen sooner rather than later. Rachel reached the wardrobe department and dove into solving the next problem, pushing aside the growing certainty that she might be pushing herself too far, because stopping meant weakness. Stopping meant giving them a reason to doubt her. Stopping meant all her fears about being pushed aside might come true, so she didn't stop. Not yet. Not today, but sometimes the universe has other plans. The wardrobe crisis turned out to be simpler than expected. A miscommunication about which costume belonged to which scene. Nothing Rachel couldn't fix with a few phone calls and some quick rescheduling. But by the time she'd sorted it out, another hour had passed, and the cramping in her abdomen had grown from uncomfortable to concerning. She found herself in the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes told a story of too many late nights and not enough rest. Her face looked puffy, swollen in a way that went beyond normal pregnancy changes. When had she last had a full glass of water? She couldn't remember. "Pull yourself together," she whispered to her reflection. "Just a few more hours." The baby kicked hard as if protesting her stubbornness. Rachel placed a hand on her belly, felt the firm swell beneath her palm. "I know, little one, I know. Just let Mama get through this day." When she emerged from the bathroom, the afternoon shoot was already underway. The director had decided to tackle one of the most complex scenes in the entire film, a sequence that required multiple camera angles, intricate lighting, and constant prop changes. It was the kind of scene that could make or break a coordinator's reputation. Rachel dove in, her mind sharp even as her body screamed for rest. She coordinated the prop changes with precision, anticipating the director's needs before he voiced them. Around her, the crew moved like a well-oiled machine, and she was proud to be part of making it all work. "That's a wrap on this setup," the assistant director called out. 15-minute break, then we move to the next angle. Rachel checked her watch. 6:30 in the evening. They'd been shooting for over 10 hours, and she'd been on her feet for nearly 12. The thought of sitting down was almost too tempting to resist, but she noticed a problem with the next setup. A table that needed to be in frame was positioned slightly wrong, and the vase that was supposed to sit on it was missing entirely. She could delegate it. Should delegate it, really. But old habits died hard, and Rachel found herself walking toward the table, her steps slower than usual. She adjusted its position, then turned to search for the missing vase. She spotted it on a shelf about 15 feet away. The walk to that shelf felt like miles. Each step sent a sharp pain through her lower back, radiating around to her sides. The cramping had become constant now, a dull ache punctuated by moments of intensity that made her catch her breath. She reached for the vase, a beautiful crystal piece that probably cost more than her monthly salary. As her fingers closed around it, another cramp hit, this one strong enough to make her gasp. Her vision blurred for a moment, and she leaned heavily against the shelf, willing the wave of pain to pass. "Hey, you need help with that?" Rachel turned to see Tom, one of the grips who'd been working on the production since day one. He was looking at her with concern, his usual easy smile replaced by a worried frown. "I've got it," she said, straightening up and forcing her voice to sound normal. "Just need to get this to the table for the next shot." "You sure? You don't look so good." "I'm fine," she insisted, though even she could hear how unconvincing she sounded. Really, just pregnancy stuff. Nothing to worry about. Tom didn't look convinced, but he nodded and walked away. Rachel stood there for a moment longer, gathering her strength, then carefully carried the vase to the table. She positioned it exactly where the director wanted it, checked it twice to make sure it was perfect, then allowed herself to lean against a nearby wall. From across the set, Keanu watched the entire exchange. He'd been in his chair reviewing lines for the upcoming scene, but Rachel's struggle hadn't escaped his notice. He set down his script and stood up, his jaw set with determination. He walked over to Mitchell, the assistant director, a man who'd been working in film for 30 years and had a reputation for running tight ships. "We need to talk about Rachel," Keanu said quietly. Mitchell glanced up from his own clipboard, eyebrows raised. "Problem? She's 7 months pregnant and she's been on her feet for 12 hours straight. I just watched her nearly collapse reaching for a prop." Mitchell sighed, rubbing his face. "I know, believe me, I've tried talking to her. She won't slow down. Says she's got it handled." "With all due respect," Keanu said, his tone firm but not unkind. "That's not really an answer. We have a responsibility here. What do you want me to do? Force her to sit down? She's one of the best coordinators I've ever worked with. If I push too hard, she'll think I'm sidelining her because of the pregnancy, and honestly, she might be right to think that. This industry isn't kind to women who take time for family." Keanu felt a familiar anger rise in his chest, not at Mitchell, but at the truth of what he'd just said. How many talented people had he seen pushed out or passed over because they'd dared to have lives outside of work? "Then we change that," Keanu said simply. "Starting now. Starting here." Before Mitchell could respond, a commotion erupted near the main set. Someone shouted and suddenly crew members were running in that direction. Both men turned and rushed toward the gathering crowd. Rachel had made it back to the main set, ready to coordinate the next scene. But as she'd bent down to adjust a piece of furniture one more time, her legs had simply given out. One moment she was standing, the next she was on her knees, one hand braced against the floor, the other wrapped protectively around her belly. "I'm okay," she was saying as people crowded around her. "I'm okay, I just need a second." But she wasn't okay, and everyone could see it. Her face had gone pale, her breathing was shallow and rapid, and she was clearly in pain. Tom, the same grip who'd offered to help earlier, was kneeling beside her. "Someone call for medical," he shouted. "No," Rachel protested, trying to stand. "No, I don't need medical. I just stood up too fast. Please, everyone back to work. We're losing time." Even now, even in this moment, she was worried about the schedule. Keanu pushed through the crowd and knelt down beside her. Up close, he could see she was trembling. Could see the fear hidden behind her determination. "Rachel," he said softly, "you need to stop." She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd started watching her, he saw the facade crack. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I can't," she whispered. "If I stop, if I show weakness, they'll never let me come back after the baby. This is my shot. This is my chance to prove I can do this. At what cost?" Keanu asked gently. "What are you really proving here?" The question hung in the air between them. Around them, the crew had quieted, everyone watching this intimate moment unfold. The set medic arrived and began checking Rachel's vital signs, asking questions about her symptoms. Mitchell called for an end to shooting for the day. The announcement was met with murmurs of concern, but no complaints. Everyone had seen what happened. Everyone understood. As the medic helped Rachel to her feet and guided her toward a chair, She looked back at the set, at all the work left undone, at all the ways she felt she'd failed. David was being called, arrangements were being made to take her to the hospital for observation. "I'm sorry," she said to no one in particular. "I'm so sorry," but Keanu heard her. And as he watched her being led away, supported on both sides by crew members who genuinely cared, he made a decision. This conversation they'd started, about cost and proof and what really mattered, it wasn't over, not by a long shot. He returned to his trailer as the set emptied out, sat down at his desk and began making a list. Because sometimes the best way to change someone's mind wasn't with words alone. Sometimes you had to show them a different way forward. The next morning, Rachel would find that everything had changed. But tonight, as she sat in the emergency room with David holding her hand, being told that she and the baby were okay, but that she needed complete rest, all she could think about was how she'd failed. She had no idea that failure was about to become her greatest teacher. Rachel spent that night in the hospital under observation. The doctors assured her that both she and the baby were fine, but they weren't gentle with their warnings. Dehydration, exhaustion, high blood pressure. The list of things she'd been ignoring was longer than she'd realized. "You're lucky," the doctor had told her, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense tone. "But luck runs out. Your body is literally building another human being. That takes resources, energy, rest. You can't run on empty and expect everything to be okay." David had sat beside her bed all night holding her hand, not saying much. But she could feel his worry, his frustration, his love all mixed together in the silence between them. "I know what you're thinking," she'd finally said around 3 a.m. "Do you?" He'd replied quietly. "That I'm being stubborn, that I'm risking too much, that I should have listened to you weeks ago." "I'm thinking," David said, squeezing her hand, "that the woman I love is so afraid of losing her place in the world that she's willing to lose herself. And I don't know how to help you. See what everyone else can see." Those words stayed with her long after. She'd been discharged the next morning, with strict orders to rest and a follow-up appointment scheduled for later that week. When she arrived home, she found 17 messages on her phone, colleagues checking in, the production office asking about her recovery, Jenny offering to bring food. But there was one message that surprised her. A request from Keanu Reeves asking if he could speak with her privately when she felt up to it. Rachel stared at that message for a long time. Why would he want to talk to her? She was just a coordinator, one small piece in a massive production machine. Stars like him didn't usually request meetings with people like her. She texted back, agreeing to meet him the next day at the studio. Despite her doctor's orders, despite David's pleading looks, she felt she owed it to everyone to at least show her face, to apologize properly for disrupting the shoot. The next afternoon, David drove her to the studio. He'd taken time off work to make sure she didn't drive herself, didn't push too hard, didn't fall back into old patterns. "I'll be in the parking lot," he told her. 1 hour? That's it. Then we're going home." "I'm just talking to him, not running a marathon," Rachel said, but she smiled to show she appreciated his concern. The studio felt different in the daylight, quieter. Most of the crew was off shooting at a location across town. Rachel made her way to the trailer area, her steps slow and careful. Everything still ached, and the baby seemed to be doing somersaults as if celebrating being away from the chaos. Keanu's trailer was easy to spot. She knocked, half hoping he wouldn't be there, that she could just leave a note and escape back to the safety of her car and her concerned husband. But the door opened, and there he was, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, looking more like a regular person than a movie star. "Rachel," he said warmly, "thanks for coming. Please sit down." The trailer was comfortable, more like a small apartment than what she'd expected. He gestured to a plush couch, and she sank into it gratefully. Her body was still reminding her of its limits. Keanu sat across from her, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Rachel felt the weight of embarrassment settling over her shoulders. "I'm sorry," she started. "For what happened?" "For disrupting everything. I know it cost production time and money, and I understand if they want to replace me." "Stop," Keanu said gently. "That's not why I asked you here." He leaned forward, his hands clasped together, and Rachel noticed something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Sadness, deep and old and familiar with being carried. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I hope you'll understand why I'm sharing it." Rachel nodded, unsure what to say. "Years ago," Keanu began, his voice quiet, "I was in a relationship with someone I loved very much. We were expecting a daughter. We'd picked out a name, painted a nursery, read all the books about what to expect. We were so ready, so excited." He paused and Rachel felt her heart start to break before he even continued. "But our daughter was stillborn. Ava. We lost her at 8 months, and then about a year and a half later, I lost my partner too. A car accident, sudden, final. No chance to say goodbye." "I'm so sorry," Rachel whispered, tears already forming in her eyes. "I spent a long time after that burying myself in work," Keanu continued. "Because when you're working, when you're busy, you don't have to feel everything that's waiting for you in the quiet moments. Work became my way of not dealing with the grief, and people let me, because I was still showing up, still performing, still delivering what they needed." He looked directly at her now, and she saw understanding in his eyes, not judgment. "But here's what I learned, Rachel, and it took me years to learn it. No job, no matter how important it feels, no career achievement, no amount of proving yourself to other people, is worth sacrificing the things that actually matter. The people you love. The moments you can't get back. The life growing inside you right now." Rachel felt tears streaming down her face. She tried to wipe them away, but they kept coming. "I watched you these past weeks," Keanu said, "and I saw myself. That determination to keep going no matter what. That fear that if you stop, even for a moment, everything you've worked for will disappear. But I also saw something I wish someone had pointed out to me back then. You're not just risking your career by pushing too hard. You're risking everything." "I'm scared," Rachel admitted, her voice breaking. "This industry, it's not kind to women who choose family. I've seen it happen. Women who take maternity leave and come back to find their positions filled, their opportunities gone. I've watched talented people get pushed aside because they dared to have children. And I've worked so hard to get here, to have this chance. If I lose it, then you lose it," Keanu said simply. "But if you lose your health, if something happens to your baby because you were too afraid to rest, what then? How do you live with that?" The question hit her like cold water, because she'd been asking herself the same thing every night, in those quiet moments between sleep and waking when all her fears came crowding in. "I don't know how to stop," she confessed. "I don't know how to be okay with people thinking I'm weak or unreliable." "That's not what people think," Keanu said. "You want to know what the crew said after you left the other night? They said you were one of the toughest people they'd ever worked with, that you pushed yourself past any reasonable limit, but they also said they were worried, that they didn't know how to help you see that you don't have to sacrifice yourself to be valued." Rachel sat with that for a moment, letting it sink in. "I want to do something," Keanu said. "If you'll let me. I want to talk to the producers, to make sure you have a place to come back to when you're ready. Not because I'm a celebrity throwing my weight around, but because it's the right thing to do. And I want to make sure you take the time you need, really need, to take care of yourself and that baby." "Why?" Rachel asked. "Why do you care so much?" Keanu smiled sadly. "Because I can't go back and change my story. I can't bring back the people I lost or reclaim the time I wasted thinking work was more important than life. But maybe, just maybe, I can help you write a different ending to yours. One where you don't have to choose between being a mother and being valued in your career. One where you get to have both." Rachel cried harder then, not from sadness but from relief. Someone understood. Someone saw her fear and her struggle and wasn't telling her to just toughen up or just quit. He was offering her something else entirely. A different path forward. Rachel left that meeting feeling like something fundamental had shifted inside her. David noticed it immediately when she got back to the car. The tension that had been living in her shoulders for months seemed lighter somehow. "What happened in there?" he asked as they drove home. She told him everything. About Keanu's losses, about his words, about the offer to help secure her place when she was ready to return. David listened quietly, and when she finished, he pulled the car over to the side of the road and just held her while she cried out months of fear and exhaustion. "You don't have to be superhuman," he whispered into her hair. "You never did." The next morning, Rachel woke up to a phone call from Mitchell, the assistant director. She almost didn't answer, afraid of what he might say, but something made her pick up. "Rachel, I need you to listen to me," Mitchell said, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it.
"Keanu spoke to me and the producers yesterday afternoon.
We had a long conversation about a lot of things, but mainly about how this industry needs to change. Rachel's heart pounded. Here it comes, she thought. The gentle letdown. The "we appreciate everything you've done" but speech. "We want you to take the rest of your pregnancy off," Mitchell continued. "Full pay. And when you're ready to come back after the baby arrives, whenever that is, your position will be waiting. Not a different position. Not some diminished role. Your job, the one you earned." Rachel couldn't speak. She literally couldn't form words. "And we're implementing new policies," Mitchell went on. "Accommodations for pregnant crew members. Better support for working parents. Changes that honestly should have been made years ago. Keanu made us realize that we've been so focused on getting the job done that we forgot about the people doing the job." "I don't know what to say," Rachel finally managed. "Say you'll take care of yourself and that baby," Mitchell replied. "Say you'll come back when you're ready and help us make this production as good as we both know it can be. That's all any of us want." After she hung up, Rachel sat on her couch for a long time just processing everything she'd been afraid of, all those worst-case scenarios she'd played out in her mind. None of them were coming true. Instead, something better was happening, something she hadn't even known to hope for. But Keanu wasn't done yet. Over the next few days, word spread through the production about what had happened. Not gossip or rumors, but genuine conversation about change. Crew members who'd been hiding their own struggles started speaking up. A cameraman mentioned he'd been afraid to ask for time off when his mother was sick. A set designer talked about missing her daughter's first steps because she'd been too worried about being replaced. The production had always been professional, but now it became something more. It became a community. Rachel received a package at her house one afternoon. Inside was a comfortable chair, the kind with proper back support and cushioning, along with a note in handwriting she recognized from call sheets and production memos. "For your home office," the note read. "Because I suspect you'll still want to work on things remotely, and you might as well be comfortable. From everyone on set who appreciates everything you do." It was signed by over 50 crew members. Rachel cried again, but this time they were good tears. True to his word, Keanu had spoken with the producers about more than just Rachel's situation. Within a week, new policies were posted. Pregnant crew members would have access to modified duties and proper seating. Parents could request flexible hours when possible. Medical situations would be handled with understanding, rather than fear of replacement. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't solve everything overnight. But it was a start. Rachel began working from home, reviewing schedules and coordinating prop lists from her couch, the new chair positioned perfectly by the window where she could see the small garden David had started planting for the baby. She was still contributing, still valuable, but not at the cost of her health. Her blood pressure stabilized. The swelling in her feet went down. She slept better. And the baby seemed happier too, moving more gently now, as if sensing that everything was going to be okay. Jenny came to visit one afternoon, bringing Thai food and updates from the set. "It's different there now," Jenny said, settling into the chair across from Rachel. "People actually take their breaks. Tom, that grip who helped you that night, he actually asked for a day off to go to his kid's school play. Before all this, he would have just missed it and felt terrible about it." "All because I nearly collapsed on set?" Rachel said with a slight smile. "No," Jenny corrected. "All because someone cared enough to speak up." Keanu could have just felt bad about what happened and moved on. Instead, he did something, and now everyone's doing something. It's like permission to be human, you know? Rachel did know. She was living it. As her due date approached, Rachel found herself feeling something unexpected. Excitement instead of dread. Peace instead of panic. She'd set up the nursery with David, painting the walls a soft yellow, assembling furniture together, arguing playfully about whether they had too many stuffed animals or not enough. "There's no such thing as too many," David insisted, adding another teddy bear to the collection. One evening, about 2 weeks before her due date, Rachel's phone buzzed with a message. It was from Keanu. "How are you feeling?" It read. She smiled and typed back. "Good, really good. Thank you for everything you did." "You changed my life." His response came a few minutes later. "You changed your own life. I just helped you see you were allowed to. There's a difference." Then another message. "The crew wants to do something for you. Baby shower on set. Would that be okay? No pressure to come if you're not up for it." Rachel thought about it. A month ago, she would have stressed about showing up, about proving she was still part of the team, about what people might think if she didn't come. But now she simply asked herself what she actually wanted to do, and she wanted to go. Not because she had to, but because she genuinely wanted to see the people who'd become like family. The baby shower was held on a Saturday, during a break in filming. When Rachel walked onto the set, supported by David on one side and feeling surprisingly strong, she was met with cheers and hugs and more love than she knew what to do with. The set had been decorated with balloons and streamers. A table was piled with gifts, things practical and thoughtful. Diapers and blankets and tiny clothes, but also a photo album filled with pictures from the production, moments Rachel had been part of creating. So she'll know her mama helped make something special, Mitchell said, his eyes a bit misty. Keanu was there too, standing off to the side a bit, letting the crew have their moment. When Rachel caught his eye, he smiled and gave her a small nod. No words needed. During the celebration, people shared stories about their own children, their struggles with work-life balance, times they'd wished someone had given them permission to choose family over job security. The conversation was real and raw and beautiful. "You know what this is?" Tom said, holding up his cup of punch and a toast. "This is us figuring out that we can make great films and still be good people. That we can care about the work and care about each other. That's not weakness. That's strength." Everyone raised their cups to that. As the party wound down and Rachel prepared to leave, exhausted but happy, Keanu approached her one last time. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly, words spreading to other productions. "People are asking questions about how we do things here. Change is slow, but it's happening. Because of you," Rachel said. "Because someone needed to say something," Keanu replied. "This time it was me. Next time it'll be someone else. That's how it works. We all look out for each other." Rachel drove home that evening with David, her hand resting on her belly, feeling the baby move beneath her palm. In 2 weeks, maybe less, she'd meet this little person she'd been carrying. And she'd do it rested, healthy, supported, and without regret. Rachel's daughter arrived on a Tuesday morning, 2 days before her due date. Labor started gently at home, giving Rachel and David time to gather their bags, call the doctor, and make the drive to the hospital without panic. Everything about it felt different from how she'd imagined it would be months ago, when she'd been planning to work right up until the last possible moment. This was peaceful, present, exactly how it should be. Lily Rose came into the world at 6:43 in the morning, weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that announced her arrival to the entire maternity ward. When the nurse placed her in Rachel's arms, still wet and screaming and absolutely perfect, Rachel understood something she'd been missing all along. This was what mattered. This moment right here. Not the job titles or the career achievements or proving herself to people who'd forget her name in 5 years. This tiny person looking up at her with unfocused eyes, needing her completely. This was everything. David stood beside them, tears streaming down his face, his hand gentle on Lily's head. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She's absolutely beautiful." "She is," Rachel agreed, and felt no guilt about the work she was missing, no anxiety about being replaced. Just pure, uncomplicated joy. The flowers started arriving that afternoon, first from David's family, then her parents, and then, unexpectedly, a large arrangement from the production crew with a card signed by dozens of people. "Congratulations on your greatest production yet," it read. Rachel laughed at that, carefully holding Lily while she read the individual messages written on the back. Words of encouragement, promises to bring food, jokes about sleepless nights ahead. Each message a reminder that she hadn't been forgotten, hadn't been pushed aside, was still part of something bigger than herself. The next day, her phone buzzed with a text. She almost ignored it, too wrapped up in learning how to nurse and change diapers and function on 2 hours of sleep. But something made her check. It was from Keanu. Just 3 words and an emoji. "She's beautiful, congratulations." Followed by a simple heart. Rachel stared at those words for a long time. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. The fear, the pushing, the nearly breaking, and then the conversation that had changed everything. The permission to be human. She took a photo of Lily sleeping in her bassinet, her tiny face peaceful, One small fist curled near her cheek. Rachel posted it to her private social media with a simple caption. Lily Rose arrived Tuesday morning. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, and absolutely perfect. Grateful beyond words for everyone who helped me get here healthy and whole. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop running and let ourselves be taken care of. Thank you to everyone who showed me that. She tagged the production company and added one more line. Special thanks to Keanu Reeves for reminding me what actually matters. Your kindness changed everything. Rachel set the phone down and went back to watching her daughter sleep, not expecting anything more from the post than a few congratulations from friends. But the internet works in mysterious ways. By the next morning, her post had been shared thousands of times. People were asking questions, wanting to know the full story. Entertainment websites picked it up. Keanu Reeves helps pregnant crew member. Choose health over career pressure. One headline read. Another said, The Keanu Effect, How One Conversation Changed a Film Set. Rachel's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Interview requests, messages from strangers sharing their own stories of workplace pressure and pregnancy struggles, journalists wanting details. It was overwhelming and unexpected and a little bit terrifying. She called Jenny, panicking slightly. I didn't mean for it to become this big thing. I was just thanking people. Rachel, breathe, Jenny said calmly. This is good. Do you know how many people needed to hear this story? How many women are out there right now pregnant and terrified of losing their jobs if they take care of themselves? You've given them hope. I didn't do anything, Rachel protested. Keanu's the one who stepped up. You did everything, Jenny corrected. You were vulnerable enough to admit you were struggling. You were brave enough to accept help. And now, you're brave enough to share it. That matters, Rachel. That really matters. Over the next few days, as Rachel learned how to be a mother while running on caffeine and determination of a different kind, the story continued to spread. But what surprised her most wasn't the attention on Keanu, though there was plenty of that. It was the conversations it started. Production companies began announcing new family-friendly policies. Crew members on other films started speaking up about their own needs. The conversation about work-life balance in the entertainment industry, which had been whispered about in private, was suddenly happening out loud. Rachel received an email from a woman who worked in visual effects. I'm 4 months pregnant and I was planning to hide it as long as possible, the woman wrote. But after reading your story, I told my supervisor today. And instead of the disaster I expected, they asked me what accommodations I needed to stay healthy. Your story gave me courage. That email made Rachel cry more than any of the headlines or social media attention. 6 weeks after Lily was born, Rachel got a call from Mitchell. She was in the middle of a diaper change, exhausted but content, when the phone rang. How's motherhood treating you? Mitchell asked. Like nothing I've ever experienced, Rachel answered honestly. Wonderful and terrifying in equal measure. That's what my wife said about our 3, Mitchell laughed. Listen, I'm calling because we're wrapping principal photography in about 2 months. No pressure at all, but I wanted you to know we're planning a celebration for the cast and crew. We'd love for you to be there, if you're up for it. Bring Lily, bring David, the whole production family. I'd like that, Rachel said, and meant it. And Rachel, Mitchell added, his voice more serious. When you're ready to come back, really ready, not because you think you should, but because you want to, we'll be here. Take 6 months, take a year, take whatever time you need. Your talent doesn't have an expiration date. Those words settled something in Rachel's chest that she hadn't realized still needed settling. 8 weeks later, Rachel walked back onto that set for the wrap celebration. Lily was tucked into a carrier against her chest, wide-eyed and fascinated by all the lights and sounds. David walked beside her, his hand on her back, steady and supportive as always. The crew descended on them immediately, cooing over Lily, sharing parenting advice, taking turns holding the baby with the practiced ease of people who'd become family. Keanu found her near the end of the evening. He didn't say much, just smiled at Lily, who'd fallen asleep despite all the noise, and then looked at Rachel with genuine warmth in his eyes. You look happy, he said simply. I am, Rachel replied. Really, truly happy. Thank you for that. For all of this. You know what I realized through all of this? Keanu said. I spent years thinking I couldn't change what happened to me, couldn't get back what I lost. And that's true. I can't. But maybe the point isn't to change our own stories. Maybe it's to make sure other people get to write different endings to theirs. Rachel shifted Lily gently in her arms. You did that. You really did. We did that, Keanu corrected, all of us together. As the party continued around them, Rachel looked at her sleeping daughter, at her husband laughing with the grips, at the crew that had become her extended family. She thought about the woman who'd hidden her pregnancy out of fear, about the policies that were changing across the industry, about all the small ripples that had spread from one conversation in a trailer. Change was slow, yes, but it was happening. And she'd been part of making it happen, not by being superhuman, but by being human enough to admit she needed help. 6 months later, Rachel did return to work, part-time at first, then gradually more as Lily grew and as she found her rhythm as both a mother and a coordinator. But it was different now. She left when she needed to leave. She asked for help when she needed it. She chose her daughter's first laugh over a late-night schedule meeting and felt no guilt about it. And slowly, others began to do the same. The culture shifted not all at once, but steadily, because sometimes all it takes is one person being brave enough to stop running and another person being kind enough to catch them when they do. That's how things change. One conversation, one choice, one moment of deciding that people matter more than productions, that life matters more than work, that being human isn't a weakness to hide but a strength to celebrate. And it all started with a man who'd lost everything teaching, a woman about to gain everything, that some things are worth protecting at any cost.